5 years locked away, an impossible escape, a shocking truth. Imagine opening your eyes every day and seeing only darkness, no windows, no sounds from the outside world, only the echo of your own fear. For 5 years, Emily lived like this, trapped in a basement, away from her family, her friends, the world, her only companion. Silence and the constant fear of what might happen in the next minute. But Emily didn't give up. She survived when all seemed lost, kept her mind sharp when sanity was hanging by a thread, and against all odds, found a way to escape. How does someone survive 5 years of captivity? And how did she finally escape that dark place? Get ready for a true story of courage, resilience, and an inner strength that defies all expectations. This is Emily's story, and the truth behind her survival will shock you. How Emily disappeared without a trace. It was an ordinary afternoon. Emily, then 22, left her house for a routine walk in the park near her home. She told her mother she would be back in an hour, but she never did. The first few days after her disappearance were a whirlwind of desperate searches. Family, friends, and volunteers scoured every corner of the city, posted posters with her face, and called for any leads that came in. Police found her discarded backpack in an alley. Everything inside was intact, except for one disturbing detail. The strap was torn, as if it had been ripped off by force. People don't just disappear out of nowhere. "Something terrible happened to my daughter," Emily's mother said tearfully in a TV interview. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And eventually, the search slowed. The city moved on, but her family didn't give up. Meanwhile, in a dark, cold basement, Emily woke up for the first time as a prisoner. Her kidnapper had planned everything with precision. The isolation, the absence of windows, the absolute silence. Where am I? Why am I here? Will anyone find me? These questions echoed in her mind for the first few days, but no one came. How could someone disappear so quickly and so completely? And most frighteningly, who was behind this cruel plan? The horrors faced in a dark and lonely basement. Emily woke up in complete darkness. The concrete floor was cold and damp, the air smelled of mold, and the silence was interrupted only by the distant sound of a dripping pipe. She tried to scream, but no one answered. Her kidnapper appeared rarely, always with his face covered, bringing food and water at irregular intervals. He never said much, just enough to keep Emily under control. "You're not leaving here, no one will find you." The days blended together. There were no clocks, no windows, and time lost its meaning. Emily began to mark the days by scratching the wall with a small stone she found on the floor. Each visit from the kidnapper was a moment of terror. She learned to decipher his footsteps in the hallway before the door opened. Sometimes he was calm, other times his moods were unpredictable and dangerous. Emily had to adapt to survive. She saved food and water even when she was hungry. She created daily routines, such as light exercise and self-talk, to keep her mind active. She avoided confrontation, knowing that any resistance could have fatal consequences. One day, Emily found something buried in the corner of the basement, a small piece of broken mirror. She carefully hid it. In that moment, the first spark of hope appeared. If I can keep my mind strong, maybe one day I can escape. But every cold, dark night, Emily wondered, is anyone still looking for me? Does anyone still remember me? Emily's captivity was not just physical, it was psychological as well. The feeling of abandonment, the loss of track of time, and the constant fear tested the limits of her sanity. How can one survive when all hope seems lost? How Emily kept her mind strong during her years of captivity. Days turned into months, months turned into years. For Emily, time was an endless blur of silence, darkness, and fear. At first, she cried every night, but eventually she realized that she had to fight, not just to survive physically, but to keep her sanity intact. She created small routines to keep herself from going crazy. daily exercises. Even in a confined space, Emily would do push-ups, stretches, and walk around. Self-talk. Emily would talk out loud, tell stories she made up, and reminisce about happy times with her family. Imaginary journal. Every night before bed, she would mentally write in a journal, chronicling her day and her hopes for the future. But there were days when her strength would waver. In moments of complete despair, Emily felt as if she were drowning in endless darkness. I came close to giving up so many times, but there was always something, a little voice in my head that said, "No, just hold on one more day." The small piece of mirror she found became more than a tool. It was a symbol. Whenever she felt lost, Emily would hold it, look at her distorted reflection and whisper, "I'm still here. I'm still me." In 5 years of captivity, Emily had built a mental fortress. Each day she survived was a silent victory against her captor, against fear, against emptiness. The body can be imprisoned, but the mind can become the key to freedom. Emily knew that in order to escape, she had to be mentally strong. Every second there was an invisible battle, but she was determined to win. How does one find the strength to carry on when there is no guarantee that freedom will come? The failed escape attempts and the moments when she almost gave up. In 5 years of captivity, Emily experienced small glimmers of hope, only to have them brutally snuffed out. The first escape attempt came in the 2nd year. Her captor left the basement door unlocked for a few seconds while he brought her food. Emily, her heart racing, tried to run, but he noticed. "You think you can fool me? You'll never get out of here." The punishment was severe. Emily went days without food or water, weakened and tormented. But even in that condition, her inner flame did not go out. On another occasion, she noticed that one of the boards in the corner of the basement was rotten. With the piece of mirror hidden, Emily began to dig, pulling out splinters of wood every night. It took weeks of exhausting effort until finally she saw a small beam of light. Her heart raced. Freedom was so close that she could smell the fresh air. But that very night, her kidnapper discovered the hole. He sealed the opening with cement. "Don't try anything else, Emily. You're only making things worse for yourself." After that failure, Emily almost gave up. She spent weeks without speaking, without eating properly, surrendering to the void. The darkness seemed heavier, more suffocating. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'll never get out of here. But then, something changed. A memory emerged, an image of her mother smiling, calling her for dinner, just like in her childhood. "My mother is still waiting for me. Someone is still out there waiting for me." That memory was like a match struck in the darkness. Emily realized she couldn't give up. She had to survive. She had to escape, even if it was her last attempt. Each failure felt like a fatal blow, but it was also a reminder she was still alive. She still had a chance. How she engineered her meticulous escape. After 5 years of living in the hell of that basement, Emily realized something. Her kidnapper was getting careless. His visits became more spaced out, his surveillance less strict. Maybe he thought Emily no longer had the strength to escape, but he was wrong. Emily began to observe every detail, the times of his visits. She noticed that he always came at the same time of day, the sounds in the environment. She heard a subtle creaking at the door, something that could be used to her advantage. Objects left behind. On one of his visits, he dropped a small screwdriver forgotten near the stairs. Emily knew she wouldn't get a second chance. With the screwdriver, she began to work on the door's hinges during the long hours of silence. A careful turn, a small rotation. Each movement had to be perfect so as not to make a noise. Days passed, perhaps weeks, until one cold dawn, as beads of sweat ran down her dirty face, the hinge finally gave way. Emily's heart was pounding so hard she thought her kidnapper could hear it from wherever he was. She pushed the door open slowly, creating a small opening, just enough to squeeze through. She climbed the stairs carefully, each step creaking like a scream in the silence. The door at the top was unlocked. When she opened it, a blast of fresh air hit her face. Emily saw something she hadn't seen in 5 years, the starry sky, but she couldn't stop. Every second counted. She ran barefoot through the unkempt garden, crossed a rusty fence, and found a deserted road. The first light she saw was from a distant truck. Emily ran to the middle of the road, waving her arms, screaming with all the strength she had left. The truck stopped. The driver got out, scared, but immediately understood. "Oh my God, you need help!" Emily collapsed on the ground, sobbing with relief, fear and a tiredness that seemed to come from a lifetime. After 5 years, Emily was finally free. But what would happen now? Who was her kidnapper? And how would she rebuild her life after so much suffering? The crucial moment when Emily finally found freedom. Emily was sitting on the truck's bench, wrapped in an old blanket that the driver had found behind the seat. Her hands were shaking, her eyes could barely focus on the road lights, but for the first time in 5 years, she felt something. Safety. The driver called the police, and within minutes, sirens and blue and red lights filled the dark night. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you again," one of the officers said, his voice firm but gentle. Emily was taken to the hospital. There were tests, interviews, tears, and finally silence. She was in a white room with clean sheets and a window, a real window. For the first time in years, she saw the sun rise. Meanwhile, the police were breaking into the prison. The cold, damp basement where Emily had spent 5 years of her life was exactly as she had left it. The kidnapper had tried to escape, but was captured hours later. His face was finally exposed to the world. Emily found the strength to give her testimony. Her voice, though trembling, was clear and determined. "I survived. He took everything from me, but he couldn't break my will to live." The news spread quickly. Emily's face was in every newspaper. Her words echoed on TV shows. She became a symbol of courage and resilience, living proof that human strength can overcome even the most unimaginable situations. But freedom came with its own weight. Every loud sound made Emily jump. Every locked door made her heart race. The trauma was a constant shadow, but she was determined not to let it define her life. "I spent 5 years in that darkness, but now it's time to really live." Emily's escape was not just physical. It was mental, emotional, and spiritual. Now she had to face a new challenge, rebuilding her life after years of nightmare. Human strength in the face of the impossible, and the impact of this story. Emily is free, but freedom does not mean an immediate happy ending. The scar of 5 years of darkness, fear, and pain will stay with her forever. The world outside the basement seems vast, bright, and sometimes too scary. She returned to her family, reunited with her mother, who hugged her so tightly that it seemed as if she wanted to protect her from all the evil in the world. But even in the safe arms of her home, Emily knew she would never be the same person who set out on that fateful walk 5 years ago. "I survived, but surviving doesn't mean I'm whole. Rebuilding myself will be my next journey." Emily has become an activist, sharing her story to help other victims of kidnapping and abuse. She speaks at schools, participates in public safety campaigns, and more than anything, reminds everyone that even in the deepest darkness, hope can be the light that guides us out. Her story is more than a tale of suffering. It's a testament to the human power to resist, fight, and ultimately overcome. If you're going through something terrible, if you feel like there's no way out, remember, you are stronger than you think. Freedom, even if it seems impossible, may be closer than you think. But this story also leaves a question that resonates. How many Emilys are still out there, trapped in dark basements, waiting for someone to find them? And what are we doing to change that? Emily's story is not just about suffering, it's about resilience, courage, and the incredible human capacity to survive even in the worst circumstances. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and comment below. I will not forget Emily. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories that reveal the darkest and strongest side of humanity. Because some stories need to be told, not just to remember, but so that they never happen again.